Dan, you said you were going to introduce me. I was expecting like fireworks, and that was okay. Thank you. No, thanks for the opportunity to talk. What I wanted to do was just tell you a little bit about how we approach design at my company, Sylvain Labs, which I'll talk about a little bit. Sylvain Labs is a strategy company. It's a strategy consulting company. We only do strategy. We have some design capability, but at the heart of the company, we only think about product development, product design, brand design. You can learn more at, you'll never believe it, sylvainlabs.com. And what I wanted to do was just quickly show you the sort of work that we do. This is a kind of a video that Google made for Project Jacquard, which is a project that we worked on and helping them develop the product experience for this new fiber that Google's developed. It's a tech-infused fiber that you can that has these new kind of tech abilities. They've launched this commuter jacket with Levi's that we helped work on. We also helped them on Project Aura, which was a modular phone, which you may have heard of. So imagine buying like a shell of a phone and you buying and attaching different modules like a camera or light and so on. So we helped kind of define that experience. We also do some work in food and beverage. We helped create something called Bud Light Platinum. You're welcome. It's a high alcohol premium version of Bud Light. That was a few years ago. But anyway, the point being that we are strategy people, and again, I'm sorry about that. So what we do is we think about what consumers want. We think about the competitive landscape. We put things together, and we make recommendations on new products and new brands. It's a company that I founded 7 years ago. We're 30 people. We have an office in New York, and an office in Amsterdam, and an office in Richmond. If you have any questions or want to talk more, I'm here. But a lot of what this work that we've done is about putting the consumer first. And that's kind of cliche, right? Everyone says that, putting the consumer first, but we live and breathe the idea of truly channeling the experience of the end user. And of course, that's all the rage right now, this idea of user-centered design. It's at the heart of design thinking. Everyone talks about that shit. It's very yawn-worthy. It makes me very bored. But the way we think about it, we try to take it a little bit deeper than that. We try to go beyond this kind of framework, and we try to go beyond sort of all the rhetoric. There are tons of books and tons of like blog posts and events and user-centered. It's so cool, it's user-centered, but it's like, it's not really deep enough to really reflect the complex nature of human beings. And user-centered, I think, only scratches the surface. And a great way to think about that is to think about some really shitty product experiences. And I just got off a huge amount of travel, and the airplane experience, the travel experience, we all know is just so crappy. Every piece of it. The bathroom is so confusing. It's like, what do the faucets do? Why does it say not smoking right next to an ashtray? Like, there's everything about the quote unquote user experience in air travel that's nauseating, and it's obvious that they didn't prioritize the user experience. They put other things ahead of it. Things like cost, things like feasibility, manufacturing, speed, the look of it. Usability, the real appetite to enjoy the experience, to really indulge in a dope experience with a product or an experience was really left at the bottom. It's a priority that's left at the bottom. So that's something that we sort of try to flip, and we put the end user as the priority. And of course, there are a number of products we all know that we all love that do this really well, that got a lot of attention. Nest, Dyson, and Help in Need are some products that come to mind. But there's this quote from the Design Council: the central premise of user-centered design is that the best design products and services result from understanding the needs of the people who will use them. I have no idea what the Design Council is, by the way. I'm sorry if you're here. I don't know what the fuck is the Design Council, but the idea of like needs, I should say, of the people who use them. The idea of needs, like what is a need? And that's something I want to talk about here. We talk a lot about needs in product development and product design. What are the core human needs? And we have a model to deconstruct what needs are, and maybe they're useful to you as you do your work in design, whether that's graphic, packaging, or even product development, or maybe even more so product development. Needs are kind of a complex idea. And of course, the world of psychology has been studying needs. Maslow and all these other fancy white dudes in Europe have been trying to dissect what is a need, and what are the motivations that drive people to do the things that they do. But the truth is, needs are very, very, very complex. They tie to deep primal motivations. about belonging and family and survival. And they can be confusing. They can be confusing. Some needs are physical, right? There's some needs as simple as I need my paycheck deposited directly into my account on time, but they can also be really emotional. I need to treat my family to a special night out so they know I care. So if you're a designer and you're making some shit, you're out to make some shit, which need motivates you in the work you do? Which need would be useful in activating design? It could be confusing. Some needs could be timeless. Some needs could be timely. I need to connect with my friends and loved ones from afar, or I need my Google Hangout to stop cutting out. So which need are you solving for as a designer? So what we try to do is get a little bit more rigorous about what a need really is. There's also this idea of conscious needs versus unconscious needs. I need a good beer versus I need this first date to think I'm successful and have my life together. You know, what need are you solving for there? So I'm gonna share with you the model we use, and maybe it's useful for you as you think about needs in the work that you do. We call it the DMT, which is a drug, yes, but that's not the point. We call it the DMT, and it stands for three things. It's a desire. So that's very simple. It's I need X, I want X. And we really work hard to put words to what that thing is that people say they want. We then have the motivation. I need X so that Y, so that I can achieve this or I get this thing. And then there's attention. The reason that this is not fulfilled, it's the but in the room. That's a pretty funny thing to say. The but in the room. So the design, the motivation, and attention, the DMT. So it's the I need blank so that blank but blank. And so in order to fill out those blanks, like what is the desire, what is the motivation, what is the tension, to get really honest answers, really do some insight work that's rigorous, we have a bunch of different tools at my company that kind of do that. One of them is this thing that we call the iceberg study. It's a survey we do with people where we ask them really all sorts of bizarre questions like, you know, have you ever smoked weed? Who's your favorite Kardashian? All sorts of provocative questions, and we couple them with brand and product behavior so we get new insights about people. This is a survey that we use quite a bit, and it's a fun way to do research without being boring. We also do really in-depth ethnography work. We're not a research company, but we happen to do research. So that Project Jacquard thing I showed you where you saw the dude on the bike, when we did that research, we mounted a bike with tons of GoPros, and we spent a day with bikers in the Bay Area and got to know what the real commuter needs and wants. So I'm going to play out a kind of a hypothetical situation. One of the most tense and crazy emotional moments that could ever happen is to have a baby. And the product design in that world is so fucked up and incomplete. When people think about insights for people having babies, they don't think about needs. They just really have this blanketed, really shallow way of looking at it when it's a really emotional time. It's like the most emotional time, actually. And so there's some horrible products for moms, new moms, or new people having babies. There are like things like bacon-flavored instant baby formula, which is ridiculous. But you could tell someone pitched this, and they were like, yeah, well, bacon is fantastic. Babies will love bacon. And the insight is wrong there. The insight that bacon tastes good is not really an actionable insight in developing a new product. There are things like the timeout pad, which is ridiculous. It's like a place you sit when you're in timeout. There's like an iPad-mounted potty to keep your kid focused. There's things like baby butt fans. These things really exist. I'm not making it up. And then there's this thing, which I'm sure you've seen, which is like a leash for your kid, which is just so bizarre and not really tied to fundamental human needs. Yes, it might have a practical benefit, but if you go deeper and you think about the desire, the motivation, and the tension, I don't know that you would make this. So going back to this, like here's an example of what you might make and what you might do if you did prioritize needs in this way and you did think about desires, you did think about motivations, and you did think about tensions. So the real, if you did the research right, you'd probably learn something more or less like this. I want my new baby to be as safe and comfortable as possible. Like that's the primary desire on the surface. I want my baby to be taken care of. The motivation, I want that so that I have a confidence and peace of mind that she's thriving, that I'm doing the best for my baby, that she's really growing and productive and going to end up being a good adult or a productive adult. But the tension is that all the information is daunting and everyone seems to have a different point of view. So this is just an example of how we would work with needs, how we would frame a need so that you really have something to work with. So as in product design, you've now got this need around the desire to have a thriving child, the peace of mind and confidence as the motivation, and the idea that there's too much information and it's daunting. So you have that. Like, what are the sort of products that you would make? And that's why there are some amazing products that nail it, that get this right, that understand human needs. And I wouldn't buy this, but the idea, this whole revolution in the past few years where the baby faces you in the stroller, that creates bonding, that creates confidence that your baby is safe. And that was a revolution, a product development revolution that solved a lot of problems. There's this new crib called, I think it's called the Supra crib, I think, that was developed by a sleep specialist that's designed to optimize sleep for babies, because that is a fundamental fear and need of parents. Like, is my baby sleeping well? And can I sleep well, please God? I talk like I never experienced that. And then there's this, I don't know if you've seen this, but this is another, it's like a baby seat that moves and it's supposed to mimic the actual womb and the movements and the sounds. That comes from a real finding that moms want to know that their babies are as comfortable as possible, and using science to support that. There are new and fancy monitors that really solve this human need at the fundamental level. You know, I want to know what my baby's up to at this time. So leveraging technology to really do that in the right way. There's the Dumbo, or the Bumbo, I think it's called, where this solves a lot of baby needs. So you get the gist. So there are a lot of products. This is a milk warming thing that's on the go. So knowing that new moms are on the go, they're moving, they're doing a lot of things. Sometimes they have other kids, sometimes they're working and so on. The idea of a bottle warmer on the go is a revolution. It's an absolute revolution. And that's because the desire, the motivation, the tension were really put at the heart of how that thing was made. So I'll leave you with this. So it's a quote, today I realize that design presents a fascinating interplay of technology and psychology that the designers must understand both. And that to me says something about stretching the way we think about what people need and who people are, and how do we put words to these need states and these needs moments to make shit that get people excited and actually fill a void in the world. So that's what we do at Sylvain Labs. And thank you for your time. And this is when you clap. Yeah, clap. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have time for Q&A. I'm in the back here.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So one for me to kick things off. So clearly studying psychology. I'm curious if there are any principles that you find yourself applying time and again in your work that it would be interesting to share.
Right. So we are absolute amateur psychologists, which in itself I think is a lesson. Maybe we read a lot about psychology and we nerd out about things like birth order and primal needs and all these little things like grits and introversion versus extroversion. We take that stuff extremely seriously and we consume it like mad. Because it really helps develop a language on how to talk about what people really want. So that way you're not talking about the things you're designing only. I find that when you talk about what people really want and what they're feeling and what's really channeling their experience in the deepest level, the design, the product design part kind of just happens by itself, and you use the language of the user. I'll give you an example. Like one thing I would leave you with is, in some of that work that you saw, some of those ethnographies and shit that we did, when we work on projects, we often go back to, remember Xavier that we met in Detroit who had that thing and he was in the fight with his wife and he needed that thing in the car to fix that. Remember that? We should do something with him in mind. And so we'll develop that product experience, and months into it, we'll always go back to Xavier. Remember Xavier? He had that thing. Like, remember that time? And it ends up being sort of an anchor, it's an integrity in the product experience, so that we're not only fascinated in making something that looks cool or will win an award or just kind of is a flashy thing. So I think psychology is important, but it's attaching kind of a real experience to stuff that makes it really actionable for us.
Great. And one other topic I was curious about, so you built your own agency from the ground up. I think we have a lot of independent creatives in the room. How did you get your first 3 clients?
My first 3 clients. Oh man, those were dark times. Yeah, so it's actually an interesting story. So I was looking for a job when I was at a previous agency, and I met this one company, and they offered me a job there. But I always had this entrepreneurial thing deep inside, and I used that interview process as a way to get a client. So I told them, thank you for the job opportunity. I would love to work here with you, but I've always had this entrepreneurial thing. How do you feel about being my first flagship client? And I'll be there. I'll work with you like crazy, and I'll hire a couple people like you would have expected me to. And so I landed that. That was a miracle. Like, it was a 3-month engagement, and I hired a couple people who are still with me. Ben and Joey are still with me, and we worked on that stuff. And for those 3 months, we worked on that project, and I kept on looking for other clients. So the way I got that first client was applying for a job. And so, but it ended up being the best thing ever. In the first couple of years were I'm about to cry. No, the first couple of years were really intense. They were really intense. It wasn't until 2.5, 3 years into it that things started really falling into place, and now things are much better, and I could sleep at night and stuff. So,
Congratulations.
yeah. Well, thanks. Oh, all right. Cool.
Hi, I have a question regarding to like design versus data. So do you have like in your process, do you have a kind of a process to quantify your strategy or product design?
Mm-hmm.
And do you think this is necessary in your strategy?
Well, first, I would say data is more than just quantified information, right? So data, there's a lot of qualitative data. So the story of Xavier and the fight with his wife is data. So when we think about data, we go beyond numbers, number one, I would say. But number two, yes, data is absolutely important. So given that it can be qualitative or quantitative, data is very important to the work we do, not only to generate the ideas, but also to evaluate the ideas, and then to sell the ideas in, which is a nightmare. Having the data is really important. But when it comes to quantitative data, I showed you the iceberg study that we did, which is a quantifiable study. So we can survey 2,000 people and say these are the motivations of these 2,000 people. So yes, data is important, but we really try to not depend as much on quantifiable data all the time. I mean, I know all about big data, and we work a lot in AI, and we think a lot about the power of data in the big sense of things. But when it comes to needs, sometimes we look elsewhere because people don't always know what they want. There's a lot about the unsaid that informs this stuff. So we try to be more promiscuous with data. Yeah. Cool. All right.
Time for one more.
Cool. No, we're good.
How you convince a client to pay for the survey and all the research you do?
Yeah, good question. Who knows? Who knows how we do that? How do we do it? So, well, research is not, like I said, it's not the product for us. Research is a means to an end. So what we will, if Google or one of our, we're working with Airbnb and Spotify right now. So if they come and they say, we're interested in a new product experience that solves this problem, X problem, we will then pitch it as like a strategic project. So we'll help you define the product experience. And the way we will do that is to develop a strategy. And the way we develop the strategy is by developing insight. And the way we develop insight is through the research. So the research is distant in the selling in of the project. Because what the clients want is the actual product experience at the end of the day. And when we elevate that, that's when we get real attention. I find that when we go in meetings and we're like, we have cool research tools. We're cool, we have cool research tools, it doesn't go very far. But when we can say things like, Anheuser-Busch was facing competition in the beer market because of craft beer and cocktail culture, and that young dudes were looking for more options in the late night experience, and that's why Bud Light Platinum is right today. That's a much more compelling proposition. So to me, it's taking the higher order answer to our clients. Our clients have they're not thinking about research. You know, they're not thinking about how do I solve my research needs today. They're thinking about I need a product experience now that I can launch soon to beat my competition and get my bonus. So that's how we do the calculation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.